When I pushed open the warped front door of that forgotten house, my breath caught because I realized someone was living here. The volunteers had come at dawn, boots dripping forest mud, begging the old ranger to check the ruin at the timberline. Children swore they heard laughter inside. Hunters whispered about ghosts. I expected empty rooms and the smell of rot, nothing more. The trail up was hushed, the trees holding their breath. Shattered glass glittered on the porch like frost. Yet inside I felt warmth, a faint pulse that did not belong in an abandoned place. In the dust were prints far too small for boots, delicate bare feet tracing a frightened dance across the boards. My chest tightened. No child survives a mountain night barefoot. Every plank groaned under me. Cobwebs grazed my face. On the table lay half-eaten berries, crimson and fresh, arranged in a neat little circle. Above me, a floorboard popped. The house exhaled, and I knew I was not alone. I climbed the staircase, each step an old confession. Halfway up, I smelled animal, wild, earthy, the deep den scent of winter. A draft curled around my collar, carrying a child's sigh. At the final door, I hesitated, then pushed. It swung inward without protest, as though the secret inside wanted to be found. She was there, huddled against the far wall, perhaps 5 years old. Dirt smudged her cheeks, hair tangled, a blanket swallowed her thin shoulders, and beside her, calm as carved granite, lay a wolf. He did not snarl, he did not rise. He only stared, gold eyes steady, ears canted forward, alert, measuring, unafraid. The girl's hand rested in the thick fur of his neck as naturally as if she had been born to it. My pulse hammered so loudly I felt it in my teeth. I stepped once. The wolf's body tensed, muscles rippling beneath gray coat, but he uttered no sound. Instead, he angled himself between us, a living shield. The girl whispered something I could not catch, and the animal's tail thumped the floor in answer, gentle as reassurance. He was guarding, not threatening. He watched me like a sentinel at the gate of something holy. I knelt, forcing breath through lungs gone tight. "Sweetheart, are you hurt?" She blinked and shook her head. The wolf never broke his stare. I could feel him reading every tremor in the air, weighing what I meant. My hands stayed open, empty. I slid my pack across the warped boards like a peace flag. From the side pocket, I drew a strip of dried venison, the ration I keep for winter patrols. The scent drifted between us. The wolf lifted his nose, nostrils quivering, then looked to the child, as though he would not act without her blessing. When she offered the tiniest sleepy nod, he stretched forward, lifted the meat from my palm, and his teeth never grazed skin. My fear cracked into wonder. Behind me, a shout floated up from outside, one of the volunteers calling my name. The wolf's ears flicked, but he held fast. The girl's fingers curled deeper into his ruff, and he leaned into her touch the way a beloved dog leans into the hand that knows its heartbeat. But this was no dog. Every line of him carried the hush of snowfields and the silver howl that rides moonlit ridges. I told the child help was here, that she was safe, yet the word safe felt paper thin in a room where wilderness itself had become her guardian. She pressed her face into the wolf's neck and breathed a word I could not decipher. The wolf closed his eyes, almost as if in prayer. For a single breath, I clung to the simplest explanation. A lost girl had crawled into this ruin, and a roving wolf had wandered in for shelter. Coincidence? Nothing more. I nearly accepted that story, nearly called down the stairs with relief. But the animal's eyes held me. They held questions I had no right to name. "Do you understand what you're seeing?" I didn't. Not yet. And if I'd walked away then, maybe I could have kept believing nature keeps its miracles separate from us. But the way the child settled against the heartbeat of a predator told me this was only the first page. I thought the child had just hidden here, and the wolf drifted by chance. Yet something in that silent room whispered that chance had never stepped foot across this threshold. My breath stayed sharp in my lungs, and certainty cracked under me like ice. I remained, unable to move, caught between terror and reverence, wondering what impossible truth would reveal itself next. I called down the stairs for the volunteers to stay back, but their boots were already thumping below. The moment the first head appeared in the doorway, the wolf rose, silent and fluid, and set himself squarely between us and the child. No bared teeth, no snarl, just that unblinking stare that said clearer than words, not one step more. The girl's small fingers never left his fur. Instead, she reached higher, scratching behind his ear the way a mother comforts a nervous dog. The wolf's shoulders eased, and for a heartbeat, his tail gave a slow, deliberate sweep across the dusty floor. She whispered something only he could hear, and he leaned into her touch. My skin prickled. I'd seen wolves bow to alphas. I'd seen them battle for rank, but I had never seen one melt beneath a human hand. 2 volunteers, Sam and Elena, paused on the landing, eyes wide. Sam breathed, "We need to get her out," and shifted his weight forward. The wolf answered by lifting his head, not threatening, simply warning. Elena froze mid-step. The air tightened like a drawn string. I felt the tremor in my own legs. I managed barely to speak. "Easy, friends. He isn't attacking. He's guarding." The words tasted strange even to me. Wolf as guardian, but the truth of it thrummed in the room. I felt goosebumps race from my wrist to my neck. This wasn't a beast. This was a sentinel. Sam mouthed, "You sure?" I nodded, though sure was far from what I felt. I held out both hands, palms empty, and took one careful step closer. The wolf's eyes flicked to me, dark gold catching the slatted light. His muscles tensed, then stilled. I stopped, leaving a respectful gap, heart hammering. That was when the girl spoke her first word, barely more than a breath, but it carried. "Vuk." The wolf's ears swiveled back toward her voice. She repeated it, stroking the thick ruff of his neck. "Vuk." The name settled in the air like a spark finding dry tinder. Elena whispered, "She named him." Something in that moment cracked open inside me. A child alone in a ruin doesn't give a name to a passing predator. She names a companion, a protector. My mind scrambled for sense. Where did he come from? Why hasn't he returned to his pack? The mountain held dozens of possibilities, none that fit the scene before me. Sam edged sideways, trying to circle. Instantly, the wolf mirrored, keeping his body between every human and the child. No growl, just an iron rule drawn across the boards. I thought for a flicker we might spend the night in a standoff. Then the girl surprised us all. She removed the blanket from her shoulders and draped it across the wolf's back, tiny arms struggling with the weight of rough cloth. He stood still, regal, letting her tuck the edges under his belly as though she were dressing a favorite doll. When she finished, he licked her mud-streaked cheek, and she laughed, soft, bright, utterly fearless. My throat thickened. How many nights had he wrapped himself around her against the cold? The picture formed unbidden. A storm outside, the house shaking, this great gray body curved around a sleeping child, eyes open to the dark. Elena whispered, "We can't just leave her." "I know," I said, voice low, "but force won't work. We need trust." I crouched, lowering my height below his. The wolf watched, unblinking. Slowly, I slid my pack across the floor again, this time opening the side flap wide. I removed a tin cup, unscrewed my canteen, and poured a thread of water until the cup shimmered. I nudged it forward. The wolf sniffed. Then, another shock, nudged the cup toward the girl with his nose. She drank greedily, water dribbling down her chin, then offered the cup back to him. He lapped once, satisfied, before resuming his post. My heart kicked. That gesture wasn't hunger, it was courtesy. For a moment I let myself breathe. Maybe now he'll let us carry her out, I thought. Maybe he knows help has come. I rose to stand, ready to signal the team, but the girl pressed her face against his chest and whispered, "Stay." The wolf settled, hind legs folding, making it clear he wasn't leaving. Not yet. So the loop remained open, a question echoing under the rafters. Where had Vuk come from, and what bond held him here stronger than instinct, stronger than fear of man? I didn't have the answer, only the shiver that ran through me as the evening light slanted in and found them. Child and wolf wrapped in the same pale beam, as if the mountain itself had chosen to bind their fates. And I knew then today would not end with an easy rescue. We had stepped into something larger than lost and found. Something ancient was at work here, and until it finished speaking, none of us would be allowed to break the circle. Sam lost patience first. He stepped forward with the wool blanket the medics had brought, arms open as if approaching a skittish colt. "Sweetie, come here," he coaxed. The instant his boot crossed the threshold, Vuk exploded upward, shoulders broadening, a low thunder rolling from his chest. It wasn't the warning growl of minutes ago. This was a line carved in stone. Every hair on his back flared. His teeth stayed hidden, but the sound alone froze the room. The girl screamed and wrapped both arms around his neck, tiny nails digging into his fur. Vuk angled himself so her body was shielded, lips vibrating with that guttural rumble. She pressed her face to his shoulder, sobbing a single word that broke like glass. "Don't!" Sam froze mid-stride. Elena gasped. My own pulse slammed so hard I thought my ribs would crack. Fear clawed up, but wonder tangled with it, because even in rage, Vuk did not snap at us. He guarded, unwavering, every muscle singing a vow. "You will not take her." I raised both hands. "Back up, Sam. Now." "But she needs medical." "Back." Up Sam retreated one shaky step, then another. Vuk's growl faded to a tremor, though his eyes never left Sam's throat. Only when the distance felt safe did he crane his head and lick the girl's dirt-streaked hands, slow sweeps that calmed her sobs. She whispered into his ear, and his tail brushed the floor in answer. Watching them, my skin erupted in chills. This wasn't possession. This was partnership. Elena's voice cracked. "What are we looking at, Jack? A feral kid and her pet wolf?" I swallowed. Number A kid who got lost, and a wild animal that decided she mattered more than instinct. Sam muttered, "Wolves don't decide." I shot him a look. He did. The girl turned then, eyes red-rimmed but fierce. With one small hand she beckoned me closer, trusting me, though I had done nothing to earn it. Vuk let me approach. His ears flicked, but he stayed silent. She tugged my sleeve and pointed toward a crumbling wardrobe against the wall. The space inside was hollowed out, a nest of rags and leaf litter. In the corner lay a neat pile of bones, stripped clean and stacked like firewood. Tiny hoof fragments, rabbit vertebrae, squirrel jaws, fresh, not old. The skull of a snowshoe hare sat on top, as though offered. My breath caught. He's been hunting for her, feeding her. I whispered it aloud. Sam's face drained. Elena pressed fingers to her lips. The girl brushed the wolf's flank, proud. "Vuk brings breakfast," she said, voice small but certain. Then she rested her cheek against his ribs, as if the words themselves were thanks. Vuk exhaled, a sound so soft it felt tender. Gooseflesh slid down my arms. I turned to the volunteers. "Do you see now? He kept her alive. He's not the threat. He's the reason she's still breathing." Sam rubbed the back of his neck, eyes on the bone pile. "Okay, but we can't camp here forever. She needs a doctor, food, clean clothes." "Agreed," I said. "But if we rip her away, she'll fight, and he'll fight harder. We need patience." An uneasy silence settled. Outside, twilight smeared orange across the window pane. The forest was beginning its night chorus, but the house held a hush so deep I heard the girl's stomach gurgle. I offered her a protein bar. She broke it in half, fed the first piece to Vuk, then nibbled the rest herself. Every gesture between them was reciprocity. Elena murmured, "What's our move?" I looked at the two of them curled together beneath the rafters. "We give them time," I said, though the words felt like walking a tightrope strung over uncertainty. "We thought the wolf wandered in by accident, but you saw the bones. He chose her. Maybe he'll choose to let us help once he knows we won't tear them apart." Sam exhaled, uncertain but spent. "One night," he said. "Then we try again." We backed toward the stairs, slow as the tide receding. Vuk tracked every inch until the hallway swallowed us. At the landing, I glanced back. The last thing I saw was the girl settling into his side, fingers twined in his fur like roots in earth, eyes closing in trust so absolute it stung my own. I told myself we'd done the right thing, give them the evening, let the wolf slip back to the wild on his own terms. I even half believed it as we set up watch outside, the porch boards creaking under our gear. Surely, by dawn, instinct would reclaim him, and we could carry the child to safety without tearing any sacred thread. But the mountain night is long, and instinct doesn't always run the path we draw for it. Deep in my chest, a quieter voice whispered, "Nothing about this meeting is ordinary. Tomorrow may not bring the clean ending we expect." By dawn, the rain had passed, leaving the forest bright with dew and raw with birdsong. While Sam stayed by the porch to keep nervous watch, I slipped into the trees alone, trying to read the story written on the ground. If Vuk truly hunted for the child, his route would be etched in soil and moss. I found his trail almost at once, a clean, long-striding line of paw prints leading downslope, crossing the dry creek bed, then looping back uphill in a wide arc. At 3 separate spots, the earth was scuffed and stained. Tufts of pale fur, a snapped hair femur, a scatter of berry skins, evidence of midnight meals delivered to tiny hands. The pattern struck me. Each cache sat at the edge of a clearing, as if the wolf chose open ground to watch for danger while the girl ate. Further on, beside an old lightning-scarred pine, the brush was pressed flat into a perfect oval, wolf-shaped, still warm to the touch. In the center lay a ring of charcoal and a few half-burned sticks. Someone long ago had made a campfire here, and last night Vuk had curled around its ghostly ember, perhaps seeking the leftover warmth for the child. I pressed my palm to the flattened grass and felt a lingering hint of heat captured from yesterday's sun. He'd given that heat to her. The thought lifted the hair on my arms, a wild animal tracking fire and comfort the way a shepherd tracks lost lambs. My mind kept searching for a fracture in the logic, but the forest offered only confirmation. Every track, every broken branch insisted he chose her, and he chooses her again each dawn. I headed back as the sky bruised purple with evening. Sam met me on the porch, face drawn. She hasn't left the room. Neither has he. Elena got within 10 feet once. He blocked her like a linebacker. I nodded, but my eyes were on the horizon. I had a feeling tonight would test us all. After dark, the air turned raw again. Inside the ruin, the girl's cough echoed down the stairwell, ragged, exhausting. I paced the ground floor, helpless. That's when Vuk appeared in the doorway, eyes catching my flashlight beam. Something bulky hung from his jaws, dark against the snow-gray fur. He padded past me without a glance and climbed the stairs. I followed at a respectful distance. In the bedroom, the wolf shook out his prize, a weather-beaten quilt, edges frayed, smelling of cedar and attic dust, probably blown off someone's laundry line miles away. The child sat up, shivering. Vuk gripped the quilt with his teeth and fanned it over her shoulders, nudging the corners until she was bundled like a winter bud. Then he curled around her, pressing his flank against her spine. Steam rose where her breath struck his fur. My throat closed. I whispered into the half-lit room, almost afraid the words would break the spell. He understood she was cold. The girl's eyelids fluttered, settling. Vuk lifted his head and looked at her, really looked at her, with an expression I'd never seen on a wolf or a man. It was old, fierce, unspeakably gentle. He looked at her like she was his daughter. The phrase echoed in my skull, ringing a bell I hadn't known existed. I felt something inside crack open, an ache, a reverence, as if the forest itself had knelt. Behind me, Elena breathed, "Jack, do you see this?" "I do," I managed. My voice felt made of birch bark. For a long moment, nothing moved but the candle flame by the windowsill and the slow rise of the child's blanket with each breath. Then Vuk's gaze slid to me, not a challenge, an invitation to witness, to understand. I nodded once, a silent oath that I would not betray what I'd seen. We withdrew, closing the door, but leaving it unlatched. Below, Sam muttered, "Maybe he'll stay till morning," then slip away. I tried to picture the wolf vanishing at first light, duty finished, legend complete, and the child waking alone. The image felt wrong, like ripping a final page from a sacred text. "I'm not sure he can leave," I said. "Not yet." A hush settled over the house. Outside, wind combed the pine tops, carrying faint coyote yips from far ridges. I sat by the cold hearth, back against the wall, listening for danger, listening for miracles, not sure which would come first. Hours later, a floorboard creaked overhead, then silence, just the breathing of two lives woven together in a knot the wilderness itself had tied. I thought that quilt was the last astonishment the night would grant us. I thought the wolf had given all the proof a man could need. I almost let my guard drift with the embers of the flashlight beam. But in the dark I remembered the ring of ashes beneath the pine, the paw prints tracing circles around invisible threats, and I sensed another revelation gathering beyond the timbers, one that would show me how far a guardian is willing to go when the child he loves is mortal, and dawn is still an hour away. The Medivac team arrived at sunrise with a trauma counselor named Dr. Harper, a woman in a down parka and wire-rimmed glasses that fogged every time she exhaled. We led her upstairs while Vuk watched from the far corner, ears twitching at the squeak of her boots. The girl stirred beneath the quilt and blinked at the new stranger without fear, almost with relief, as if a long-overdue adult had finally shown up. Dr. Harper knelt. "Sweetheart, can you tell me your name?" The child whispered it, a hush of syllables lost in the wolf's breathing. Dr. Harper smiled and offered crayons and a clipboard. "Will you draw what happened?" While the girl chose a sky-blue crayon, Vuk crept closer, head low. His nose brushed Dr. Harper's sleeve. She froze, then, guided by some quick instinct, let her hand rest on his skull. He accepted the touch, the tension in his back easing like a string released. I saw the psychologist's eyes widen. Whatever theory she'd packed for the hike shattered under her palm. The girl's picture took shape. Jagged black lines for mountains, spirals for wind, a stick figure trudging. Mid-page she drew herself lying in snow, arms splayed. Above her, a gray shape, huge paws, pointed ears, gripped her coat hood between its teeth and dragged her toward a crooked rectangle that had to be this house. She added a bright orange scribble, the quilt Vuk would find for her days later. Last, she gave the wolf a yellow eye, and beside him, a red heart. Finished, she held the drawing to Dr. Harper like proof stamped by the wild itself. "During the storm you fell," the doctor said gently, "and the wolf pulled you here?" The child nodded. "I was so cold, my words were snow." Dr. Harper's throat bobbed. She turned to us. She wandered off a hiking trail with her parents 3 days ago. They were separated in the blizzard. She remembers white everywhere, then darkness, then the wolf's breath on her neck. Sam muttered. So the animal found her half frozen and decided to rescue her? No, I said before I could stop myself. Rescue is a human word. He knew she wasn't prey. The room went quiet around that admission, my voice carrying weight I hadn't meant to reveal. Dr. Harper cleared her throat, trying to piece it into science. We've seen cross-species caretaking. Maternal instinct can misfire under stress. Maybe the wolf recently lost a pup. Vuk's gaze flicked to her, unreadable as moonlight on ice. If he carried grief, it was his secret alone. Elena broke the silence. Whatever the reason, he keeps choosing her. Over food, over freedom. Dr. Harper examined the drawing again, searching for ordinary corners in a story that had none. At last she said, "We can rationalize pieces." She was small, still, hypothermic, less threat than whimper. He might have been curious, maybe even drawn by the scent of milk in her backpack, but lifting her by the hood, bringing her inside shelter, that's tool use, intentionality. She exhaled, casing the miracle in clinical terms the way a jeweler measures a star. The girl reached out and traced Vuk's muzzle with a crayon-stained finger. He closed his eyes, a sigh rumbling deep in his chest. My skin prickled. He saved her once, and every hour since, he's chosen to save her again. The doctor tried the careful next step. "We'd like to take you someplace warm, okay? A hospital with hot soup." She held out her arms. The child pressed closer to Vuk. His ears flattened, not in fear, but warning. I saw muscles coil beneath his coat. One wrong move, and the thin piece would tear. I stepped forward. "Easy, big fella, we're not stealing her." My voice shook with conviction I couldn't explain. I faced the team. He dragged her out of a whiteout, fed her, covered her. That's not accident, that's intention. You separate them now, we undo 3 days of trust. Dr. Harper exhaled, glasses fogging again. "Then what do you suggest?" "Let's escort them, both of them, down the mountain. Walk, not carry. We keep a buffer, stay calm, and see if he'll follow her into the transport crate voluntarily. If he bolts, we don't chase. Her safety first, but his choice has to matter." Sam rubbed his temples. "A wolf in an ambulance. Perfect." I managed a thin smile. We'll call it unconventional care. For a heartbeat it felt settled, cataloged, tamed by protocol. We had an origin story, blizzard, lost child, freak maternal instinct, and a plan that looked plausible on paper. "We thought that was it," Miracle explained. "Crisis managed, end credits ready to roll." But outside the wind shifted, carrying a distant chorus of howls, high, seeking too many voices for one wolf to answer alone. Vuk's head snapped toward the window, amber eyes igniting. The girl sensed his tremor and tightened her grip. I felt the floor tilt beneath all our neat conclusions. The mountain had just reminded us, logic can label the parts, but it can't command the heart of the wild. And the next choice Vuk would make might test every promise we had uttered in this fragile room. They made the decision at dusk. The rescue team signed the papers. The sheriff radioed clearance for an early morning airlift. A pediatric unit would meet us at the Valley helipad. On the clipboard, it looked clean. One lost child, stabilized and transported. The wolf was a footnote. "Will attempt relocation if feasible." Words as neat as autumn leaves pressed in a book. But night crept in, thick and metallic, and nothing felt neat. I waited until the camp settled, until radios crackled to silence, and the generator's last sputter died. Then I climbed the stairs with a lantern cupped in my palms like a fragile moon. The bedroom smelled of pine needles and wool. The girl slept curled against Vuk's chest, her fingers twined deep in his ruff. His breathing was slow, but his ears stood erect, tracking the smallest creak of the floorboards. Moonlight bled through the broken window, silvering the quilt he had carried miles to warm her. I hovered in the doorway, sudden stranger to my own boots. Tomorrow we would unlace this bond, place protocol where devotion had been. My throat tightened. Vuk's eyes slid to me, liquid gold, ancient and alive. He did not move, but the message was clear. Step soft. She dreams. I lowered myself to the floor, back against the cold plaster, lantern dim. Minutes stretched. Outside, frost glazed the ruined porch. A fox barked once, far off. Inside, the only sound was the hush of a child's breaths merging with the wolf's. At length her grip loosened. Sleep took her deep, eyelashes still against her cheeks. Only then did Vuk shift, slow, careful, as if sliding out from beneath glaciers. He eased her hand onto the quilt, nudged the fabric higher around her shoulder, and rose. He patted toward me, no growl, no bared teeth, just the quiet weight of his presence. Paused silent on the warped boards. He halted an arm's reach away, head level with my own. Moonlight caught the pale scar under his eye, proof of battles I could only guess, and glinted on each whisker. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then, impossibly, he dipped his muzzle once. Not a bow, not submission, something older, a gesture carved into bone memory, a nod, recognition passing from one guardian to another. My pulse thundered. I opened my mouth, but words felt too loud for the sacred hush. So I whispered, voice frayed and earnest, "You're no beast. You're a miracle." The syllables shivered between us like birds just freed. Vuk's tail gave one slow sweep. His eyes held mine, clear, steady, sad. In them I saw the blizzard night. The child collapsed in snow, his jaws closing on her hood, the long drag to shelter, the hunts through darkness, the blanket stolen from some distant line. I saw a vow forged without language. I swallowed. Tomorrow they'll take her down the mountain. They'll care for her. I swear it. My voice cracked on the promise. He listened, still as standing stone, yet I felt he measured my sincerity, weighed it against instincts older than firelight. After a moment, he exhaled, a soft rumble that spread warmth across the chilled room. Acceptance, or maybe farewell. Behind us, the girl murmured, turning in sleep. Vuk glanced back, alert, then looked to me once more, an understanding past so raw it hurt. Protect her, even when I am beyond her reach. I nodded, tears startling me with their heat. He leaned forward, brushed the tip of his nose against the back of my hand, anointing me or marking me, I'll never know, and returned to her side. He circled once, lay down, and curled his body along the curve of hers, the way shore cradles see. His ears stayed pricked, but his gaze drifted toward the door, as though already watching dawn approach. I backed away, each step deliberate, unwilling to let the floorboard groan. At the threshold, I paused, lantern low. The scene fixed itself in my heart. A child safe inside the fortress of a wolf's devotion, moonlight crowning them both with silver fire. Downstairs, the air tasted of cold iron and pine smoke. Sam stirred from his cot, half awake. "You say your goodbyes?" I stared at the staircase, emotion raw beneath my ribs. "No," I answered, voice ragged. "I just witnessed what goodbye looks like when the wild writes it." He frowned, but exhaustion pulled him back to sleep. Outside, the eastern sky paled to pearl. Soon the rotors would thunder. Strangers in white coats would lift a small body onto a stretcher, and paperwork would reduce a miracle to incident codes. We believed we had tomorrow mapped. Child saved, wolf gone, story closed. Yet as the first birds sang over the ridge, I sensed the mountain holding one last breath, waiting to remind us that vows made beneath the moon are not so easily severed by morning light. They brought the truck as close to the trailhead as gravel allowed, red cross on the side doors, catching the pale sun. I walked ahead of the stretcher, clearing branches, pretending my hands weren't shaking. Vuk moved behind us, silent shadow, every step measured. The girl lay bundled in the quilt he'd found, eyes wide above the mask of woolen hat and scarf. At the last bend, the forest split open to road, metal, asphalt, diesel, everything that does not belong to mountains. The medics lifted her, quick and gentle, onto the waiting gurney. Straps clicked. She twisted, searching the tree line. "Vuk!" Her voice cut the morning like a torn note. "Vuk!" I turned. He stood 5 yards back, paws planted in frost, ribs heaving. He could have closed the gap in 3 strides, leapt, fought. Nothing would have stopped him. But he didn't move. Instead, he tipped his head to the sky and let out a howl so thin, so aching, it felt stitched from the threads of his own heart. The sound quivered across the valley, bounced off rock faces, dissolved into blue. The girl's fingers fluttered like leaves. Tears clung to her lashes. A medic reached to lower the stretcher gate. She caught his wrist. "Wait." She looked at me, then back at the wolf. The howl faded to a tremble, then silence. Vuk lowered his head, but still he didn't come. His eyes were on her, steady, shining, breaking. She breathed, almost to herself. "He told me I'm safe now." My pulse stumbled. "Told her?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. "How could you know what he said?" She touched her chest, small palm over pounding heart. "I just hear him." The medic tried again. This time she let the gate rise. The gurney rolled into the truck. As the doors shut, she held my gaze through the crack. "Take care of him," she whispered. The latch clicked. Her face vanished behind tinted glass. I looked back to the wolf. He made no move to follow. Wind lifted the fur along his spine like grass under storm. Another siren wailed somewhere down mountain. He flinched, ears flat, but stayed rooted, as if an invisible tether held him to the line between forest and road, one paw in wilderness, one in farewell. "Go on," I murmured. "She's safe, just like you said." For a breath I thought he might turn, vanish into green. Instead he sat, tail curling over frost, eyes tracking the truck until trees swallowed it. Only then did he throw his muzzle to the sky once more. The howl that came was softer, cracked, the sound of a door closing on light. I couldn't breathe. That wild lament folded the whole valley into quiet. Squirrels froze mid-branch, birds stilled on wires. Even the engine noise seemed to lean away out of respect. When the last note bled into silence, Vuk lowered his head and looked at me. No challenge now, only exhaustion, a grief too huge for his frame. The morning sun caught in his eyes like embers dying. I stepped forward, boots crunching gravel. "She'll remember you," I said, voice raw. "I'll make sure." The promise felt paper thin, but it was all I owned. He blinked, once. Acceptance? Goodbye? I will never know. Then, without drama, he rose and padded back toward the trees. He did not look over his shoulder. Branches closed behind him, erasing his shape as if the forest were swallowing a dream. I stood there long after the truck's taillights faded. Sam called from the ridge, asking if I was coming. My throat worked, no answer forming, because a question kept looping in my skull, cold and bright. How did she hear him speak? We label what we don't understand as instinct, accident, coincidence, but the child heard a sentence, and I watched a wolf obey love over hunger night after night. I thought that was the end, miracle witnessed, girl rescued, guardian returned to shadow. Tie the bow, tell the story, move on. But highways do not reach every corner of a mountain's heart, and vows spoken in a wolf's gaze do not fade when engines start. Somewhere beyond that first ridge, Vuk's howl still hangs in the pines, a thread pulling at whatever I once called certain, and deep inside, a new unease grows. If the wild can love like that, what else waits to rewrite the rules I've lived by? I turned at last toward camp, footsteps suddenly fragile on the gravel, carrying a silence I couldn't put down. I waited 7 days before hiking back to the ruin. 7 days of city noise and paperwork that couldn't muffle the echo of a wolf's goodbye. The forest greeted me with cold wind and the smell of rain. Every step felt like trespass into a memory still breathing. The porch sagged deeper than before, shingles scattered by the last storm. Inside, dust swirled where once a quilt and a heartbeat warmed the floor. The room seemed larger in emptiness, yet heavier, as if the air itself remembered weight. In the corner, a tuft of gray fur clung to a splinter, soft as ash. I knelt, lifted it to the light. Fresh. He had been here after we left. Uneasy, I began to circle the walls, searching for whatever called me back. Under a cracked window, a board lay slightly ajar. I pried it up. Beneath, in a shallow hollow, rested a single bone, fresh, marrow clean, teeth marks sharp. He had dropped his last offering where she once slept, a farewell gift to a ghost that would never hunger again. Wind rattled the shutters. I stood, head buzzing with questions no textbook could frame. A glint on the far wall caught my eye, 4 raw scratches scoring the plaster, still flaked with wood dust. I stepped closer. The marks formed a rectangle, child height, edges uneven but deliberate. Inside, 3 vertical lines, one tall, one nearly as tall, one half their size. Father, mother, child, a family drawn in the only language a wolf owns. My breath hitched. He had left her a picture, or maybe left me a reminder. This is what you saved. This is what I loved. My knees folded. I sank onto the bare boards, back against the wall. The house smelled of pine rot and lingering fur. My chest cracked open and the tears came, hot, unstoppable. I cried for the storm night, for the howl on the road, for every wild secret humans flatten into footnotes. I cried because a wolf had understood shelter, hunger, warmth, art, and because the world outside these walls would never fully believe it. In the silence after sobs, the room seemed to listen, and I heard the girl's small voice from that morning on the highway. He told me I'm safe now. Somehow she heard him. Somehow he spoke. I pressed a palm to the scratches and whispered, "She's safe, Vuk." "I promise," a jay shrieked outside. Leaves rattled like applause. I wiped my eyes, stood, and faced the doorway. No paw prints remained to follow. He had melted back into legend, carrying his own heartache into the pines. All I could do was carry the story where people might meet it with wonder instead of doubt. I stepped into the afternoon light, leaving the bone where he placed it, a monument no stonecutter could rival. As I hiked down, the wind rippled through branches above, and I thought I heard, faint, distant, a single clear howl, not of sorrow this time, but of release. If your heart is pounding right now, if you feel that fragile thread between us and the wild, subscribe. This is where the true miracles of nature are told. I reached the valley as dusk bled gold over the river. My boots were mud-caked, my spirit scraped raw, yet I felt light, as if the mountain had exchanged part of its burden for part of my disbelief. People at the clinic said the girl was laughing more, sleeping through the night. They said she kept a gray ribbon under her pillow, a piece of quilt thread she called Vuk's promise. I smiled through fresh tears. Some oaths travel farther than any road. Back at my cabin, I sat by the stove and wrote every detail before memory could soften edges. When I finished, I read the last lines aloud to an empty room, voice shaking, but sure. If you think animals don't feel, don't love, don't sacrifice, you're wrong. I wouldn't have believed it myself, but I saw it. And now I know animals remember kindness, sometimes better than we do. If you too have met a miracle in the wild, write in the comments, "Animals remember kindness."